the charge.
You know what the funny thing is, and I wasn't expecting this, but I kind of felt like it was going to happen, is that we ended up wearing the same outfit.
Yeah, I tend to wear very simple, black and white.
Yeah, the amount of time that's happened in life, where we end up wearing the same thing is kind of always an interesting situation. But I suppose that's why we're sitting here as well too. We share the same style. We're not sharing the same seat today, but we share the same role in the company as well too. And I think that's why we're excited to do this podcast, right? Is that I've been looking forward to it for a while, because I feel like there's been years where we've just been quietly working behind the scenes to be able to get the company to where it is. And the information that we have, I believe that we should share it, and not for any other reason other than enabling other people to be able to take that information and utilize it for themselves, so the world can just become a better place. Just because we're doing what we're doing in the line of work that we're doing doesn't make what we're doing more important or better. I think everybody working on everything all together is ultimately where we need to get to. And there's probably tips and tricks and little insights that I hope people will be able to take away that'll amplify what it is that they're doing.
Yeah, I agree. What's you like to do your morning routines? What's one thing you learned this morning that was different?
Oh, my morning routine was interesting this morning. So yesterday I posted that I'm back. I was like, yeah, I got my energy, I got my sleep. And then this morning my watch told me to take it easy. So the one thing that I think I took away from this morning, it was that sometimes technology, though it's your friend, can also be your enemy. So I ended up pushing through and it worked out anyways. And I was able to get ahead of my day by a pretty big window of time, because we have the marathon coming up, right? How many days out is it now?
10, right? 10? Next Sunday? 10 days,
yeah. 10 days. And this is crunch time, but not from the perspective of pushing ourselves harder, but be disciplined in the rest cycle, right? Which is counterintuitive to what I just said, because I pushed through and I did the workout anyways. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting, because as we get closer to that marathon timeline and getting the race done, the more careful we have to be with all the decisions we make going into crowds, going out for dinners and whatever it is. You almost have to just conserve your energy as much as possible and stay away from, for lack of better words, like germy areas, right?
Yeah, we were just on a plane 2 days ago. It's probably
ties
into that, but yeah, no, I agree. I think
that's
it's an interesting aspect. I never even thought about that.
Do you think you're gonna wear a mask on the way to Toronto? So
no.
To give a frame of reference, the marathon that we have coming up is in 10 days. It's in Toronto. It's the main Toronto Marathon. It starts north of downtown and it works all the way. It's way down and goes along the waterfront and back. And I was thinking about that. Is how seriously am I actually taking this? Like, what level do I want to go to in regards to preparation just before the race actually happens? Am I going to conserve my energy to the max? Am I just going to do my normal thing? Have those thoughts been entering your mind yet?
Yeah, I think what I look at for that is funny. I was actually yesterday evening or the day before, I was thinking about what the last 4 marathons have kind of taught me.
Yeah.
And I think a big aspect is like, what did I do in the ones where I did well and what did I do in the ones that I didn't do well? So one of the funny things on that was that the first marathon I did on the weekend of my brother-in-law's bachelor party. So, and I ended up actually getting the 3rd best time I've got. So I took that as like what did I do there that I did right or did wrong? And then it goes back to what you're saying, is like, what are the things that you're gonna do that maybe aren't your normal routine? And I think a big thing for me is that if I change something in my routine that I wouldn't normally do, so even like wearing a mask, it protects me from obviously aspects of germs and everything like that, but I almost think that sometimes that stuff mentally will impact you the opposite way. And I tend to be the kind of guy that's like, that actually might be a negative impact because I don't normally do that. And I wouldn't do that even like, we just were in a huge crowd. How many people were at that event? Like 2,000 or 3,000 people.
Yeah, we're fun.
Didn't even take that into account. I think it's more so of like the prep for it. So like you're doing your vitamins, you're doing all your stuff on a day-to-day basis, right? That ties into that. So I'm probably not going to change anything when it comes to that because I feel like it's worked so far. Now, I don't want to say that everything I've done is like, hey, this will get me to where I want to go. And obviously hitting the goal of 3 hours and 30 minutes, we'll have to change certain things. But I think the training this year has just been so different that I'm in a different mindset for it.
Yeah.
That's not like any other year, because I think the other years, again, I came in the office this morning, I was talking to Kyle and I was asking him about his marathon prep, and he was saying like, he's doing these things and like chasing these times. And I was like, I've actually changed this year with the Garmin, obviously, program that you showed me. And it's actually created like this way different mindset of like, I haven't been chasing time, which is super hard for me because I'm like, if I can beat myself at everything, I will try to do that. And I just haven't been doing that this year. So I'm interested to see how that reflects into the marathon. I think that's where my main focus has been.
Yeah.
Like if you try to make your focus on the whole thing, it creates like almost like analysis paralysis on different areas where it's like if you focus on one aspect of it, it's actually like, okay, I'm focusing on the training part. The other things are kind of tied into that. But
yeah, I feel you on that. Absolutely. And that makes a lot of sense. And thanks for actually countering my perspective on that. Like, yeah, forget the mask. Maybe I'll just wear it on my forehead. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be a good idea because I'm the same. As soon as you create an additional variable, regardless of whether you address it or not mentally, it's applying on the state of things as a whole. And the Maffetone method, which is what we've been doing this year, was created by a doctor. I don't want to misquote the year, probably like 25 or 30 years ago. This individual has been tracking this style of running, and what it fundamentally is low heart rate training. It's keeping your heart rate under 135-ish, and which is technically anaerobic. It's not an aerobic threshold, period. What that basically means is that you're running and your body doesn't know. Your heart rate is so low, even though you're running, it's not aware of it. And it creates this like anti-ego running, right? Because I love putting down good times and pushing as fast as I can. And we have so much data now, like how much kilometers per hour we're running, what we're clipping at, and things of that nature. And it's been really humbling this year, just running at a lower heart rate. And I'm getting passed by like old people in the park and little kids on bikes. And I'm like, oh man, it just kills you. But at the same time, it just kind of puts you in a perspective that, you know, you're actually truly doing it for yourself, which is in a weird way where you're having to push yourself in relation to not pushing yourself, which is really interesting. But I agree with you, man. Like every single year has been different. That one was funny when you had Brian's bachelor party and then you ran, was it literally the same weekend?
Yeah, so I came back Saturday, drove from Montana, and Sunday morning ran it. So but the weird thing about that is, I think and this is what's cool about marathons, I think where you are in your life is, would I do that today? Probably not. But I think it's where I was in my life at that moment, I felt like I could do that. So that's where us doing the marathons every year, it's super cool. And I think we discussed this when we were putting like the goal in place, is that every year it's going to be some different aspect that's going to push us either through it, or we're going to have years where we do worse or something actually impacts that and you still show up, but it might not be what you wanted to show up for. So again, that one was just the one that came to mind yesterday. I was kind of just laughing at it because it's like, again, I don't think I would do that today, but I'm also not in the same circumstances, right? So it's nice to be able to have, even this year with the training program, like I think mine's 8 weeks, right? So one of the things that we did is cut out alcohol, which I don't think we've done that before. So that
have you thought about that? When was the last time you didn't drink? 5, 6?
I'm German, so it's like I was born with the beer in my hand. So this is obviously it's a cultural thing. It's a cultural thing. So I honestly don't know. To like 2 months or 2.5 months for me is like I can't name it. So I think the impact that's made.
I was able to work it back. For me, it was when I was 21. So it's been over a decade now, right? That alcohol piece is interesting. I also chose to cut out sugar. And the reason being is that, you know, Halloween happens and you have all these candy bars and all these other things. And I didn't realize that those became like catastrophic events in my life or my body, whether it be Christmas time, birthdays, Halloween, whatever it was. If there was food that was there that was available for me to eat, I would eat it just for the sake of eating it. And I didn't realize how much damage it was doing to my body. And now, obviously with the tracking, like I'm, at least the readout that I'm getting, I'm back to the fitness level and the body that I had when I was in my early 20s, which is sick to see when I'm getting a little old now. So it's
what you can do,
what you can do when you actually put your mind to it. So giving things up is always interesting. And I think this year has been an interesting one for you as well too, because sure, you started training for 8 weeks, but you've also had 10 days off because you had some artwork done, right? You got some Crayola crayon drawings on your back finished. And then you also, some paintings. And then you also had, actually, and it just happened again last night, shoulder injury.
Yeah, the old dodgeball, but it's, you can dodge a ball, but you can't mess up your shoulder, right? So, no, I think that one's been very interesting. But the funny thing is when you, in those moments when it's like I knew that I was going to do the tattoo. Actually, funny enough, it got last minute chalked in kind of during the training schedule.
Yeah.
That I could prepare for. So it's like I knew mentally there'd be whatever 10 to, well, I think it was a bit early, so 10 to 12 days that I couldn't train, which you don't realize when you're in a mindset of like high performance output, how much that messes with you. I think I would rather train for a marathon and run every single day, work out, do whatever, and put my body through like misery than sit there and let your mind take over when it comes to those moments. And I know you've experienced this as well, is because you realize in those moments how much of a, I don't like this word, but like a blessing, or how much of a, like, you have this ability to do those things where some people don't.
Super fortunate, yeah.
You're very fortunate, and I think you take it for granted. And then in those moments, you realize that. So that was a big thing for me, is was able to go into my mental state of things for that kind of whatever, that 1 or 2 weeks. And then the other part was the breathing. So one of the things that actually worked out really well for that is I was able to work on different breathing methods that helped me now during running, that I've actually tried to like integrate before and into the running aspect.
Yeah.
And then the shoulder side of things, like right now, it's probably hard to tell, but like it's hard to lift my shoulder above my shoulder level. So that was through the side of the dodgeball, which is again like a fun sport that we play with the company.
Yeah.
But at least with that, I was able to kind of say, hey, I've pushed myself to a limit. Don't push past where I normally would not do that. Like I would go to the end where I can't move my arm, right? So there's progress being made there. I think just the timing isn't ideal, but I'm definitely not going to dodgeball next week because we're too close to the marathon, so I got to be
we're way
careful
too
with
close.
that. Yeah.
No, and you just reminded me of like last year. So last year we had some difficulties going into the marathon prep as well too, right? We had friends getting married.
Not just getting married.
A lot of travel.
Look, what kind of wedding was that? That's like
not
a normal, a 4-day
wedding.
Yeah. That's not a normal wedding.
We spoke about drinking.
Yeah.
And
we did the polar opposite last year.
Our friends, which all our Vancouver friends are part of a group, and they're, unfortunately, we call them the Bird Gang, because our friend Berinder's kind of the ringleader there, and an amazing group of guys, all really, making their mark on the world. And that 4-day wedding was an interesting one because we went there with the mindset that, hey, we're going to take it easy. We don't want to go too hard. And I think the second night, 4 people pinned us down.
Yeah.
And like put us into like headlocks and everything, and then started pouring alcohol down our throats.
Yeah.
So I suppose this is the reality of like having like a high risk, high reward lifestyle, is that you need to be able to surround yourself with people that push you to that limit.
Yeah.
The bad side of that coin is I ended up getting injured on that because some sort of incident happened at the tail end of the wedding, where I kind of went off the surface and my heels dug into the ground and I compacted 6 nerves in my spine, right? And I know you were on the flight with me, but I had gotten off the flight, and this is now, I think Sunday we'd come back. I'd gone off the flight and I was in such bad shape, I couldn't stand straight. I don't know if you remember in the airport, I was like crouched over and I couldn't straighten my back out. And I went to a massage therapist at like 7 p.m. on a Sunday. So it wasn't the cream of the crop, it was a random lady, just beat the crap out of my back, and that probably didn't help. And that was it. There was no more training, and that was 30 days out from the marathon, give or take.
Yeah, I think 3 weeks. It was like 20. Yeah, it was like 20 days.
Yeah, okay, so 20 days out. So sitting there for 20 days at my desk at work or at my house, just staring at the wall and not having any tools to utilize from a mental standpoint was so frustrating. And then when I showed up to the marathon, I was still standing on my heels because my back wouldn't get straight. But luckily somehow I made it all the way to kilometer 32, and then my back gave out and I collapsed. And Jared, one of our friends, right, was running the marathon with us, and I was putting on a good clip. Like I was going for a sub 4 even at that pace. He comes by me around the corner, and I see Jared, and I'm like, oh no. And what had happened was I was laying down flat on the concrete, and I was trying to get my legs up to release my spine. And this is where the ego comes back into play. He's like, do you need help? And I actually probably could have used his help. But I said no, because I didn't want to sacrifice his time. He was there for his own journey, and he needed to do what he needed to do. And the last thing that I wanted to do was invade upon that. And I knew I needed to suffer by myself. So it took 20 to 25 minutes of me like just cradling my back against the concrete. I found like a rock, actually. It helped a lot. I don't think I told you that detail. I found a rock and I was able to like just push it against certain parts of my spine. And I got up and I had to use this method of counting. So I counted to 70 And then because 7's my favorite number, so I was like, Ronaldo, whatever. I'll just count to 70 and then I'll count to 15. So I would jog like super lightly, like limping on one leg for 70 seconds. And then I would stop for 10 seconds and then 70 seconds. And that's how I had to do the last 10 kilometers to get to the line. And on the way there, I saw somebody getting carried out on a stretcher. Somebody passed out against a tree with like a breathing apparatus against them.
That's
like
more
emergency
common
teams.
than you, yeah.
I was mind blown, and I was thinking, should I be stopping? And and that thought enters your mind, right? But luckily, I was running with 2 other people who were having their own issues, and we didn't talk to each other. We didn't look at each other, but for some reason, we just knew to stick together. So I suppose the reality that I took away, that even if you feel like you're alone, you're actually never alone. And it's a really weird thing to explain because it doesn't make sense unless you get into the hardships yourself. But I believe that's where the marathons kind of relate to what we're doing on a regular basis in business, right? Is that there's been times where we probably feel like we're isolated. I was responsible for certain parts of the company. You've been responsible for certain parts of the company. And we knew we couldn't put the stress of our stress on each other because we had to own our, for lack of better words, we just had to own it, right? And we had to carry the weight of those things by ourselves. But that's no longer the case. We have a killer team now. And there's a lot of people running in the marathon this year as well too, doing different distances between the 3 that we've selected, which is the Toronto, Edmonton, and Calgary. And the fundraising is going well too, right? Like we've raised just about $5,000 so far. The cutoff is at the end of August, I believe.
Yeah, I think it got extended because of the Edmonton's in August 21st.
Yeah, and our goal this year is 15 grand, right?
10 for 8, 5 for 8, yeah.
What's your favorite part about the impact of the money that we're raising? Because by the time we're done this, since we started this initiative, it'll be almost $60,000 that we've raised to date for these causes.
Yeah, I think, what's the most, it's hard to chalk it up to one thing. I know they obviously give us an impact report, which is super cool to read, but going through those and seeing that video, I think the biggest thing that I would say is this realizing how far a little amount of money can go. And like, I'm not saying like $1,000 is a little bit of money, but in the bigger scheme of things on what that can do for an individual's life. So like hearing the stories, like when we're watching the videos.
And these are the videos that like Nate and Sade are sending about the students that the money went to help them get into school, right?
So like the actual impact report that they send us and show us the videos, like you're listening to individuals that are choosing between, can we have something different for dinner, or like, do I have to buy my textbooks next?
Like that girl being able to feed her kids. I was like, you don't realize like how hard some people have it until.
Well, I think you just don't realize that like that's literally a decision that people are making on an everyday basis in Canada. And I think we're very lucky that we live in Canada, and obviously both of us are immigrants, so we understand that side of things. But I think it's just, you see the impact of what that makes on an individual's life, and that they're saying that I can't even think of like, you're making a decision between buying a textbook so you can get your education so you can go further in life and having food for your family, right? Like
that's messed up.
That's a decision that just is very hard to wrap your head around. So seeing that something that we do and that other individuals in our life support can actually do that for someone or a family is I think the biggest thing. Again, the whole impact of the Strides for Sustainability scholarship is huge. And I think the other thing that it shows is just, that's the beginning. Like we're at such a small point of what our side of the charity side and the philanthropy side will come.
Absolutely.
And just seeing what that small piece can actually do and what that will be one day is just super cool. And plus, on top of that, we're both SAIT graduates, and to be able to graduate from somewhere and then give back at that amount is pretty freaking cool.
Well, yeah, and you know what, actually just touching on that, that's why I think what we took is so cool, right?
Yeah.
I think the reason we never felt those moments of angst is when you go in the trades, you're getting kind of paid to learn.
Yeah, fair.
Like you sign up, you get your hours in, you're getting paid that entire time. Then you go to school and it's subsidized by the government. Yeah. And then you go back again, and every single year you get fixed raises all the way through, right? Yeah. So and it's only 2 months. So you actually can really focus on, having a steady income and then budgeting accordingly in relation to when you have those months where it's a little bit less money. And I think it's the magic of the trades, and us being electricians. Like it's cool to see like all the different pathways that you can take. Getting a degree is definitely a luxury for sure. 100%. If there's a way that you can afford to get it, it's absolutely worth it. And that's the world that we're living in now, is that at a minimum, if you want to be able to live like a reasonable life, especially in a place like Alberta, I feel like a lot of people aren't seeing it yet, but Alberta's becoming competitive. Oh, yeah. And where we came from, you're born in Stuttgart in Germany and I was born in Birmingham in England, every single job, even the jobs at McDonald's, there's 100 people applying.
Yeah, it's competitive.
It's so competitive. Nobody starts businesses over there.
No. No.
I mean, that's a broad statement. I mean, I have family that have businesses.
Yeah. It's rare though. It's like it's under 10%.
It's super rare, and there's bankruptcy laws are different. Like, so the opportunity and the opportunity for prosperity and freedom that we have in Canada is like nothing else in the world. And though there's always struggles, I find that there's people like us that want to help out, and we're not the only ones. There's tons of people that are coming up in the city and in the province and in the country that are also doing what we're doing. And I think this is another reason why the podcast is so important, is that we need to talk about having a business and not talking about Lamborghinis and Ferraris. Forget those things, they're stupid. It's about actually taking that money that we're making and then utilizing it for good and giving it back to the community and growing that as a whole. And making sure that we're making sure that impact goes as deep as possible, because that's where the reality lies in being a human. It's not in the things, it's in the other people, right? Even tying it back to the marathon is those, when I was struggling with my back issues, there was people that were around me that weren't talking to me, but they were there for me, even though they might not have known it. It's that we need to figure out how to be able to do that and almost like call people out and be conscious of what you're doing and actually take the time and effort that you've applied to all the effort that you've put into developing yourself and use it to develop others. Don't keep on making your pool of wealth and things bigger, because that's not how the world progresses, right? It's all about just putting it back in and extending our gratitude beyond our means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you gotta have fun too, right?
100%.
From time to time, but
yeah,
not everything can be serious.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
That's, yeah. Yeah, I think it goes back to like that whole saying with the whatever screwed Lamborghinis and stuff. I think the moment that you realize that if you stop chasing the money side of things and actually have a purpose for what you're doing and for your vision, the money comes. And I think it's cool that, again, a lot of people don't understand that, but I think it's seeing that in motion and kind of everything we've done. And this morning I was listening to that podcast, and I think that quote that I sent you guys, and I'm just going to pull up my phone here because I want to read it.
Which podcast was this, sorry?
It's called The Founders. It's
really
really good, where the guy reads the books.
The Founders, yeah. The one about the quantum leap.
Yeah, so let me just see here. I just want to pull this up because it's cool. Sorry. Just where did I put
And what was it in relation to? It was like,
so he was saying that like a lot of people forget the whole journey, and I think the journey of where you get to somewhere. And I think that the big thing is that from the outside world, no matter how someone sees you, especially in today's society, it's quick content, right? So it's like, hey, Zeno's been able to raise $60,000, right? Like you were saying, they don't look at what was built there, right? What did it take for us to actually put $60,000 into a scholarship, into a fund?
Yeah.
So that's why this resonated with me, because what he said is there's no such thing as a quantum leap. There's only dogged persistence, and in the end, you make it look like a quantum leap. So why that's cool and why that relates to this is because when you look at a vision and something that you bring together, and what we're trying to do with Zeno is that at the end of the day in 2040, when we hit 1 million homes or destroy that, because I think we're on a trajectory to do that, people are going to look at that as the end goal, and they're not going to see the journey, and they're not going to see the aspects that went into that. And I think, again, you said this podcast is about like bringing that to life. These are the moments that we remember and that we share, because then you can actually tell that whole story in sections on how you get there. Instead of it just being, there's this quantum leap and we went from 0 to 100, but it's actually not what it is, right? So that's why this morning when I heard that, I was like, that's super cool. It ties into what we're doing. And yeah, so.
Yeah, and I did the classic thing that I did. I just turned it into a joke, because we have a meeting tomorrow called Quantum Leap with one of our...
Quantum something.
Yeah, with one of our external parties.
Yeah.
David Tadman, if you're watching this, sorry, man. We have a meeting with you tomorrow called that.
Yeah.
And I thought it was hilarious, right? And I didn't actually take in what you said. And sometimes I have a habit of doing that, is like I find that we're in such a position that sometimes like there's a lot of joy in what we do. And it's mainly because of the people that we have at Zeno, right? Like we have amazing team members that are inspirational to us. I don't think they realize how inspirational they are to us. Like we hear their stories, we meet them, understand like what their goals and ambitions are and how they want to be able to bring it in life within the company. And because of that, I'm usually in a very like, oh, let's just have fun kind of mindset. But I always appreciate you bringing up these things later and then being able to dive deeper into them, because I do agree with that, is that those minor moments of hardship that you have to go through and risk that you have to take in order to be able to get to where you want to be are so frightening in the moment. But when you look back at them, you're like, oh, it actually wasn't that big of a deal. And humans have a habit of blowing those things out of proportion. On the other side of the coin, 100%. There's a risk that comes with getting used to that kind of stuff, right? Is that you become numb to risk. And then that's how you can kind of smash into an unknown obstacle, and that's been coming at you head on the entire time. You get the blind spots, right? How do you feel that you can avoid those blind spots? Like what's happened that's allowed us to be able to get to where we've gotten to without, you know, hitting as many of those walls as possible? Because we've dodged quite a few.
Dodge. Funny enough, I don't know if I would say dodged. I feel like if there's a wall or a speed bump, I'm sure we've hit it.
Yeah.
I think that when you look at dodging those things or like taking those in and taking them out, again, it goes back to the mindset of how you approach that situation. So if we were to say, hey, this is like a brick wall and like we can't get past that, I just don't think our mindset ever goes to that. I don't think that we think like that as humans or as individuals. Yeah. And I think what you said before here with like that aspect of the team that we have, when we were 1, 2, 3, 4 years in, it was the both of us, right? That were like, hey, everything falls on us. We hit these walls. We need to figure out how to break it down, whatever that looks like. I think now that wall happens and we have a team of individuals where there's a bricklayer, there's an individual that knows how to do the grout, there's an individual that knows how to do each aspect and actually disassemble that wall for us in a way better manner than us just ramming through it because we just won't stop, right? So I think it's not so much that we're not going to hit those as we grow. I think we now have the right tools where individuals will back or be able to see those walls coming. That's another thing, is I think we now don't just have 4 sets of eyes, we have 100 sets of eyes that are looking at something ahead of us, and leaders within that team that are looking even further ahead that can spot those things, spot those speed bumps. So yeah, I don't think that there's a way to avoid them. I think there's a way that you can make it easier. And it goes back to just like the goal that you set and how you're going to get there. And even like the 2040 goal with Zeno, like that, if you ask truly the moment we set that, I probably would have said that's impossible. And I think that's why
I remember that moment.
That's the perfect goal to set. Because the thing is, when you set an impossible goal, you have to change the way that you do things on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Because when you set a possible goal, you're going to do exactly what you do on a daily basis to get there. But when you set an impossible goal, you have to go outside your comfort zone. You have to figure out what are you going to do differently on a day-to-day basis that's going to get you to that goal. What have we done? We've completely shifted the company right in those 2 years since we set that goal, or 18 months or 20 months. Yeah. So I think it's about setting impossible goals so that you change your mindset on how to get there.
Do you want to go for a run the morning after the marathon?
The morning after the marathon? Yeah, if the legs allow it.
No, let's do it. Let's set like another impossible goal. So your goal is 3:30. Mine is sub 4. And then let's do a run the morning after. Because the way that we've trained this year, I think we'll be able to do it.
Yeah, I think so too. I was talking again, Kyle, this morning about that. Like the 3-hour runs, you feel tired, but you're doing something the whole day. Where like last year, you're out.
You're out. I was like, I'd be falling this. Yeah, I would do like a half marathon, come into my living room.
Once
and then,
too.
Yeah,
I did
just
it once.
And I'd fall asleep on the carpet.
Yeah.
4 hours later, I'd wake up like on the ground still. Like this is probably not ideal. I look like I just went out and partied and smacked my head off the ground. Yeah. But yeah, this year's been. It's amazing what the body can do when you allow your mind to get out of the way. It's super cool, but not to discredit what you just said by just turning it into another goal.
No, all good. It's about that.
You talked about like how things are easier now, right? Or not necessarily easier. I think easier is something that we could kind of formulate into that rule. That's something that we believe is super important for our client experience, right? We want to make sure that our clients feel as if they went through the goal of starting from nothing and getting solar or an EV charging station or a battery system as easy as possible, right? I feel like easy is a word that kind of gets misconstrued, underused, maybe overused, whatever. It's all over the place. How do you feel like your life has become easier in the last maybe 6 months, 2 years since we've brought on more team members and key individuals, whether it be personal or professional? Do you feel like there's been something there that's changed in you?
Yeah, again, I wouldn't say easier. Like you were saying, I think it's things have clicked in more from an aspect of that getting to do what I would say I'm good at, what my given gift is, so to say, rather than doing things that I'm actually not good at, that there's probably 99 people out there that are better at it. And
Oh yeah.
seeing someone, one of the coolest things I think in the last 2 years and the moments that we've had is that you realize that something that you're doing on a day-to-day basis is like, you're taking this much time, whatever, 2-3 hours, and there's an individual who comes in and can do that in half an hour, 10 times better than you, right?
It's always
and
fun,
I think,
fun and frustrating.
yeah, and I think that's been the big part. Now, I've obviously recently transitioned into an even different role than what I was doing before, and bringing in an individual like Ian, so to say for the integrator side of things, so into our operating model, even just seeing in 90 days what he can do compared to what I could do in 2 years, I'm
Yeah,
like,
it's crazy.
again, it's just that it's super cool to watch. And I don't think, again, it doesn't make your life easier, but it makes your life flow. You allow yourself to flow in your presence of what you're good at and kind of let things just happen and be comfortable with that rather than trying to control every aspect of the company or every aspect of situations that are ongoing. You realize that there's people that are that much better and they're actually doing a good job. And then when you get involved, you actually create more chaos and more problems. And I think that's a big thing that I have to start shifting and looking at. But yeah, so that's what I would say. What about you?
Yeah, my life is a little interesting, I suppose, in relation to that question. You used the word chaos there, right? Now, you know me well enough. Do I like chaos or do I avoid chaos?
Yeah, it's like it.
I love it. Yeah, which is probably a problem because I think individuals that love chaos will typically create it unnecessarily. So for me, stepping back and getting out of my own way and fundamentally other people's way is the most effective way for me to be able to utilize my energy. Now I'm a pretty, and you are as well too, but in different ways. We're both very energetic people. We have a lot of energy. We wake up ready to go. Even if our stupid watches tell us, we should probably just be staying at home and hiding under the blankets, we still feel like that we can perform and execute at a very high clip. So when I look at that framework of things as a whole, I end up putting myself in a position of, is this actually what I want? I have a really hard time answering questions like this because I feel that the perception of who I am is always a moving target, that I'm never satisfied with the version of myself that I'm currently at. Now, I hope as time continues to move forward and I continue to mature as an individual, that piece will settle down and I'll start to understand myself better and come to peace with who I am in relation to what the world needs me to be. But that's where I found the biggest difference is me stepping into the, at first at least, the visionary role by myself while you took on the weight of the integrator role, or what fundamentally would typically be handled by a COO, allowed me to sit by myself for a very long period of time. Because it's been about 2 years that I've been in this role now, right? And I helped transition and onboard you into that role, a version that you can take on for the last 4 months, 5 months, give or take, right?
It's 3, yeah.
Only 3 months.
Yeah.
So I've been in this position for two years now, and in that time, it's like I found myself again. The business in the early years forced me to be everything I didn't want to be. I had to be, like a digital renderer, an auditor of our solar models, had to clean up garbage, had to install solar panels, you name it, we did it. We did everything, right? And I ironically enough, I miss some of those things. Sometimes, like yesterday, I designed a t-shirt just for kicks, right? Because I was like, I have this muscle, I want to use it. Sometimes it's fun. But as I took this time off and I stepped away from the previous role that I had, which was the director of sales, and stepped into the visionary role, what I mean when I said I found myself again is I kind of forgot who I was in those early years of the business for like the first 5 or 6 years. And the person that am now again is like that like the person who really loves listening to music, likes to spend time in nature, wants to hang out with like loved ones, loves like performance sports and pushing myself further, being emotionally available for our team members and being able to listen to what their needs are and understand how we can actually make their lives better, and all the other people in my life as well too. That's what I feel like I always wanted to have in my life. And I feel like there's so many people that are able to do that and didn't have to go through what we went through. And that's where the simplicity of life, of just living it as it comes, is almost, something I don't understand, but something that I wish I did. And I suppose the way that we've been raised, we just didn't have that luxury. We're always meant to do something like this from what we understand, right? Mm-hmm. So I know that's a really ambiguous answer to your question. It's one that I wrestle with on a regular basis in regards to how this has impacted my life. And I'm sure it'll change if you ask me this in a couple episodes. I'm sure it'll change again as well too. But that's where I'm currently sitting, is that I'm kind of just like content with where I'm at, and I'm ready for whatever's around the corner. I know that I have absolute confidence to be able to make whatever it is that Zeno needs to get done.
Yeah, I think it's like we were in a reactive state for the 5 years. I think the moment that we brought in the
really
operating
reactive
system, I think it at least made us less reactive. I'm next level excited to get to that point as well, because I think I can see it and I can feel what that looks like, what that takes, and kind of like what comes together to bring that to, again, that flow state of life where you are who you are. I know the other day you sent me that Drake screenshot from the song, and I forgot what he says, but it literally ties in perfectly.
Oh yeah,
happy to pull that up after or whatever, but
that was a heavy one. Yeah.
Pretty much the gist of it was that the moment that you realize who you are and what the world needs you to be, that you can just be yourself. I think that is not something that a lot of people can achieve, and I'm definitely not there. It's just that's what I'm excited about, and I think that's what the company needs to go to those impossible levels of 1 million homes by 2040, because the old us wouldn't get us there, right? So if we're not changing all the time and adapting and allowing ourselves to be who we are, we won't get there. I think we realize that. So yeah, everything you said definitely resonates on that, and makes a lot of sense. So
do you find that progress as a whole is what we subscribe to, right? We're not standing on a pedestal saying that what we're doing is the best and this is the only way that you can do things. We think everything needs to work together, whether that be energy or people or ideas, whatever it is. You kind of need to find that middle ground where neutrality exists so that progress can happen. Now, the hardest part about individual progress that I've discovered is leaving behind a version of yourself. And we talk about this a fair amount, right? In order to be able to get to the next level, you have to leave behind a version of yourself. And the worst part about it is the version that you're leaving behind is the best version of yourself, typically. Unless you've gone through some really tough years, maybe you had some losses in your family, or you had cancer, which is so common nowadays as well too, or something is going on in your life where you had a stretch of bad years. The average human being has continued going like this, or maybe it's a little bit more of a linear lineup. Either way, getting to the next stage of who you want to be, if you're committed to self-development, the hardest part is always leaving behind the best version of yourself. The version that you work so hard to be able to get to that certain point, and now all of a sudden you hit a plateau and you got to shut it all off and reinvent yourself. And this Friday is 8 years in the business.
It's wild,
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And how many times have we had to reinvent ourselves, do you think? Can you even count? Have you been able to acknowledge those moments, or?
No. I think, no. That was one of the things that's hard throughout that journey, is actually stopping and acknowledging those things. But no, I can't count on one. It's a lot. You have to change all the time. You're constantly, the only consistent thing is change, right? I think we take that super seriously, and like you said, you don't get to those next steps if you don't do that. So.
Well, I think that's where we're lucky that we have each other, right? And for those listening and other people in my life, you're all important, and you all play a very specific role. Probably a role that I'm not even aware of to a certain depth, but that aside, the relationship that you and I have is an interesting one for many reasons. But in relation to what we're talking about right now, is that we kind of just accept each other as we are. And it doesn't matter what situation it is. Remember, we always used to have this thing where neither one of us is ever in a bad mood at the same time, which is still true.
Yeah.
It's super, super rare that one of us will both be angry about the same thing or frustrated about the same thing or whatever that non-happy mood is, right? And we bring each other out of those very quickly, which allows us to continue focusing on progress. And I think we can't count how many times we've had to do that. And I think those are the inflection points where we've had to reinvent ourselves. And the reason why it's been so easy for us to do it is because we're watching each other's backs at all times, right? And it's made it a lot easier, which is one of the, I suppose, like one of the key elements to our relationship as a whole, as like business partner, as like brothers, and like as like probably friends that hang out too much. Like we're just kind of, we're always just down to do whatever, right? Which is always nice, which I think is a rarity. But maybe people watching should understand that anybody can have a relationship like this if you can put your own selfish ambitions aside. Because when we first started hanging out, and it's not like we've known each other our whole lives, there's this perception that you and I are childhood friends. I mean, relatively looking, when we're like 100 and we're looking back on our lives, when we met, we were children, right? But when we met, you were 21?
21.
And I'm 4 years older than you, right?
Yeah.
Or in your words, I'm almost dead.
Yeah. You're ancient.
Yeah, I'm ancient, right? So
dust.
Yeah, it's just about to pass away. So when we met, the one thing I think we realized really quickly, and say this in your own words, is I was kind of enamored with who you were as a person. I was like, who is this person? And why is he the way that he is? It was so different from who I was, but we liked exactly the same things. And I was like, this is so odd, that I was willing to put myself completely aside to be able to learn how you became who you became. Mm-hmm. Even to the point where I first met Bjorn and Sylvia, your parents. Mm-hmm. And do you remember the first thing I said to them when we sat down for lunch?
Yeah, like, what did you do to raise Kai, pretty much?
Yeah, I was like, how did you raise Kai? And your parents were like, I don't know if they've ever been challenged like that, right? And the entire lunch became me taking notes and writing things down in relation to like how they raised you as a person so that I could emulate it. And I think Steve Jobs quoted, I forget who Steve Jobs quoted, but was it?
Yeah.
What does he say? Good artists copy, great artists steal. Yeah. And for me, I knew the fastest way in life was to be able to look at people that I admire. So I admire you, obviously. Like, I mean, you know how highly I think of you and how much I love you. And I looked at it from that perspective, and I'm like, okay, if I can replicate the best things about this person and integrate it into who I am as a person, then I technically have cheat codes. And I don't know, maybe it'd be interesting to hear your perspective and how that kind of aligns in relation to when we first met.
Yeah, I think, it ties into like meeting someone that has the same, I guess, outlooks on life, raised the same, but completely different views on or ways of approaching it, I think was the cool thing. So when we met, one of my goals was always to like somehow have a business or do something. Like, it was just like in my blood. I was like, I want to own a business. It's in the family, whatever it is. And but I always knew, and I think this is something that I was fairly good at, is like I could always tell like if someone's going to be able to show up and actually do those things and get to that next level. And I think within not even like probably weeks of us interacting, that clicked right away. I was like, this is an individual that has the same values as me, looks at life the same way but through a different lens, which I thought was really cool. Has had different life experiences that got you to the same place. I would say we were in the same place at that point when it comes to like our life kind of goals and things we were doing.
Yeah.
And I think I just realized in that moment that like an individual that's so different but so alike, that we meet in a place of work where we were doing electrical work with which both of us knew wasn't the end goal, I think was that big thing for me.
Yeah.
And then obviously I loved like all of your bathroom reader. You know, you had every time we talked, there was something that you had. Your wisdom is crazy. Like the amount of information that you can share. I had never interacted with someone before like that. I think that again, there was something, the way that you dig into things, the way that you, even what you just said about me, right? Like you went and you go do the research. I hadn't met someone like that. And I think one of the things that I looked for was, where are my gaps and how does someone fill that? And that's how you create the perfect yin and yang. Yeah. And I think that's what happened when we met. And that didn't take 5 years to figure out. Usually that stuff I can figure out within like a few interactions with someone. Yeah. And that was that clicking point, is like, I saw those things. I was like, okay, this checks this box, this checks this box. And for me, how I look at things, and I think it's another thing where we're a little bit opposite, is people gain my trust right away. You have to break it. Where for you, I think you go and you do all your research to gain the trust. And I think that's where we were opposite as well. Yeah. And that was where like those check boxes were hit. And then the rest is history, and we're celebrating 8 years company on Friday, right? So like that's not the in-depth version of it, but again, those are the main areas where like that's just how I look at it, right? So
no, and it's nice. I mean, I feel like I troll you, but I don't troll you as much as I used to. That trust building exercise, it just brought back a funny story. We both love music as a whole. Like we listen to everything. You just started getting into like country rap or something like that?
I wouldn't say getting into it, but it's
Well, you were excited.
There's some that I was
excited to share
about.
it with me,
Yeah,
and I was like,
surprised.
You told me about it before you played it, and I was like,
it's not bad.
What? I was like, okay, like, man, I'll listen to T Swift every now and then as well too. Man, I like, Katy Perry has a couple good songs. Like, I'm okay with any kind of music, right? If it moves you, it moves you. Yeah. There should never be a bias against something that brings people together, and I think music does that perfectly.
100%.
The night that I probably pulled the biggest troll move on you, that really solidified our relationship, there was a DJ in town, and I forget who it was. It was at a club that I don't think exists anymore. It was on 10th Street, and we had basically gone out, and I knew going into that situation that we were going to meet the morning after. I had purposely set a meeting the morning after, so this is a Friday. I had set a meeting on Saturday morning at like 7 or 8 a.m. and we met down in the Core Mall ironically for tea or something, tea or coffee. And I knew that as an individual that I needed to make sure I didn't get drunk. But as part of that, I'm like, okay, you know what? This guy's pretty cool. There's an opportunity for us to work together. I might as well see how diligent he is, and I just got you wasted. Like, just kept on feeding you shots and like having fun. And I think you were under the perception that I was also drinking as much. And this is like a young guy, like 21, like you throwing your hands in the air, just having a good time, just like going woo the whole time, right? And it was always entertaining to watch from an arm's length. But you showed up that next morning, and even though you were hungover, you didn't complain about it once. You drank the tea, and we focused on what it was that we wanted to talk about that day, which was, developing this idea and turning into something real. And that moment was the moment that I knew that I didn't have to worry about the trust with you anymore, that I felt that I reached that point of success in relation to me being comfortable with letting go of any trepidations I had, and we were able to start running at that point. That's when things like really started to light up from my perspective, and there's a bunch of other events since that point in time that really solidified it. But I mean, it's just my nature, right? I like to troll, and I do it for selfish reasons, and I think this is where the key of different personality types is, and this is hopefully where we'll be able to provide some value. I believe that being selfish and true to yourself is the best thing that you can possibly do for your life. And the reason being is that if you're constantly living in a state for other people and you're serving other people's needs, you'll never be able to get a clear view of what it is that you want out of life. And when you start living your life on your terms, the people that will accept that will start to surround you. And then you'll gain this level of efficiency that's only ever achievable when you're in your flow state. And flow state is something that's hard to define. Nobody really knows how to do it, but that's what I believe the flow state actually is. It's an individual that's living selfishly with good intentions and going about life in a way that is not malicious, but for the sake of progress and development. And when you fall into that, it's beautiful, right? Like I met you, Janet, Barinder, like the list goes on and on and on, Kyle, like all these amazing people that I've met along the way. Even the guys in there in the back here, the guys at MCA as well too. I met them because of that reason, right? It's like, what did I want? How is it that I wanted to get there? And what is it that I wanted out of life? And it was always that long-term vision. Like, you said you always wanted to have a business. Yeah, like day one, like I just knew that I always wanted to be able to do something on my own terms, because I hate to say it, and I think this is true for both of us, we kind of just never really fit in anywhere, right? Like we're always the odd man out, always getting bullied, always getting picked on, had to deal with every single version of, like tyranny that you could possibly think of, people that we thought were our friends ripping us apart, like all these different things over the years. So when you don't fit in into an existing structure, what's the best thing you can do is probably just create your own, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that's a good way to look at the full shit. I think it's, it's about building life around the things that make you happy, so to say, but yeah.
Yeah, and it's not even really happiness. I think here's where emotions kind of become interesting. The more aware you are of all spectrums of emotions, and I use this word loosely because I'm not an expert by any means on this realm of things, but the more enlightened you become, right? People will get caught up in happiness, but I love sorrow. You hear it's a rainy day and you hear one song that just pulls your emotions right down. The deeper that you're willing to go into that, the higher the other side of the coin will be as well too, right? Or the greater the other side of the coin will be as well too. And individuals that are constantly pursuing this idea of happiness or that spectrum of emotions are really actually missing out on life, because it's in the deaths of people that are close to you, the losses that you face, whether it be monetary, financial, whatever the heck it is, those in some cases are the most beautiful moments in life if you embrace them. And that's where you become stronger. If you get comfortable with embracing the darkness per se, as most people call it, or the darker side of the spectrum in relation to emotions, that's where you start to get power as an individual. If you're constantly pursuing happiness, right, then you're not going to really get that far, because you're setting up yourself for failure, because that's only one half of the human experience, and life is short, right? And you need to be able to experience that sorrow to be able to really figure out what the full spectrum of things look like versus just one side of it. You need to be able to look at the other side as well too.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's just taking the failures or the sorrows, as you say, as like learning lessons, right? I think everything, you learn way more from failing or being angry at something 10 times, right? Like,
yeah,
that's where you actually learn things, right? So I 100% agree. But overall, I think conversation's been really good. It's good to go down it's funny, last night I was doing a presentation prep for the weekend, and like,
you're doing a little bit of a keynote this weekend, right?
Going down memory lane, like to just see stuff, and like, it's super cool. So I think it ties in well to close things out here. Is we get to celebrate 8 years on Friday, I think, with a bunch of individuals that are amazing and that have got us to this point, and I don't think we would be at this point without that. And just being able to, like, again, every single day continue our journey. And what I realized on that is that the journey is the destination, and business is an infinite game that you have to just realize that there's no end goal to it. And just like life, you can't look at the end goal as death, right? It's literally the infinite game of what you do in between. So I think that was a good conversation to be able to talk about all that and go into the depths of some of the earlier days of the business and our relationship. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I'm looking forward to continuing these conversations and kind of unlocking perspectives and stories and things that we've experienced to this. But I think as a whole, what we can share is that we don't know what this podcast is going to be. We're kind of just going to the best of our ability, wing it. Mm-hmm. And it's not just going to be us always. It's going to be individuals that we appreciate, people that we see value in other individuals that have stories, or under other individuals that are in the process of discovering what their story is, and bring them on and have conversations. So as this podcast continues to evolve, I'm just excited that we're doing this and we're kicking things off, and we have a great team behind us ensuring that, the right things happen, things look good. And I guess for a first kickoff set, this is actually the more chill lounge area in our new office upstairs in the building that we're currently in. This was slapped together in like half an hour, Yeah, and I'm looking at the team behind here.
It came together well.
They came together well. Yeah. This plant came out of nowhere. I thought it died at our old office, but somebody kept it alive, right? So I think this is the beauty of the moments that we're going to try and share. They're going to be authentic. And we do have some guests in mind that are going to be really interesting, not the normal humdrum guests that you'll see, and we're probably going to be authentic. So if there's some of you that we end up turning off, then just turn it off. If there's people that want to engage and go deeper, that's what we're going to focus on.
Yeah, I think a thing to mention too is like the podcast is focused around leading the charge. I think that's what we want to have as the theme.
Yeah.
Is like individuals that are just leading a charge, whatever space they're in, whatever they're doing in life, and how they're looking at life. So I'm excited to get deeper into that. I think this kind of sets the pace for it and sets kind of the theme, but that's really where we're going to dig deep and go into that. So
yeah, absolutely.
Excited.
Well, let's call it there, man.
Shake
Do a
hands?
little handshake. Yeah. All right, man. Looking forward to it.